Diesel can be a very devious and bad-tempered engine. He is always scheming and causing trouble for the engines of Sodor. And sometimes, he usually bumps his trucks harder than any other engine too. Nevertheless, in spite of his naughty disposition, the Fat Controller considers him a very useful engine to have working on his railway. For one, Diesel is very strong, though not on the same level as Henry, nor as fast as Gordon. He is capable of pulling heavy trucks whenever a job needs to be done. The rest of the time, he is usually seen shunting coaches and trucks, whether it be in the yard, at the docks, and at the quarry. One day, Duck and Diesel were shunting in the harbor yard near the big station. Duck was just pushing some empty trucks into a siding that ended at a buffer stop near the waterfront. As he approached the quay, however, his driver put on the brakes. But Duck's wheels wouldn't grip. The rails were too slippery and he was sliding towards the buffers. Oh no! I must stop! Phew! What happened? Oily rails, and by the looks of it, there seems to be motor oil spilling everywhere. That's why we couldn't stop. Hello, Diesel? I think you must be leaking oil.
Leaking oil? What poppycock? I'm not leaking anything.
But I had a nasty slip on some oily rails just now along the quay, and my driver said it was motor oil, so it had to be a diesel and, well...
Oh, what a load of steam and coal dust. I don't think that your driver can tell more oil from water. It could just be a different kind of oil from smelly fish or another vehicle. Besides, don't you have something else to do than just sitting around and making assumptions about me?
Duck was very cross with Diesel for being so rude and not believing him. Later, Percy was coming into the yard to collect some trucks when he too slipped on the oily rails.
Bust my boiler!
Oh my, Percy! Are you alright?
Oh, I'm fine, Duck, but I just don't know where this oil had come from.
Percy's driver climbed down to check, and he too thought the oil had come from Diesel as well. At that moment, Diesel purred up.
Hey, Diesel, I think you must have an oil leak. You should probably go to the diesel works to get yourself checked.
Rubbish! There's nothing wrong with me. You steamies are all making a fuss over nothing. I'm not leaking anything.
That diesel is so difficult to even realize this. What will the Fat Controller say?
I bet he won't like it, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens. The next day, Diesel was having a rest while his driver went off duty to speak to the foreman. Nobody noticed a trail of motor oil that had been left on the tracks behind Diesel. Just then, Rebecca had just arrived with a long goods train. But when she tried to stop, her wheel slipped too.
Whoa, dear, look out!
Diesel heard Rebecca's whistle, but by then it was too late. Rebecca went bump straight into the back of Diesel.
Whoops. Sorry, Diesel.
Well, you should be, you silly steamer. Why couldn't you look where you're going?
I was, but I couldn't stop because there was an oil on the tracks and it was making the rails slippery.
Well, I keep telling everyone, and I'm saying this for the last time. It wasn't me!
Well, aren't you now? Diesel looked over and saw Duck and Percy puffing up beside him with the fat controller on board. He climbed down and spoke sternly to Diesel. Duck and Percy have told me that you have been very rude to them about oily rails, Diesel. Whether it be motor oil or not, it would have been more wiser to have you inspected when you have a smaller problem before it turns into a much bigger one. Diesel's driver looked over his engine. Well, what do you know? It is you leaking oil, Diesel. Something must have burst that caused the fuel to spill. Though I'm afraid it means no more work for you today. Percy and Duck both tried not to stifle a laugh, and neither could Rebecca, while Diesel just groaned. While the slippery rails were being cleaned up, Diesel had to be sent to the diesel works to be repaired. When he returned to the yards, the story of his oil spill had already spread. None of the other engines, whenever they saw him, didn't say a word, but now and then would sometimes make jokes about slippery rails and motor oil. Suffice to say, Diesel thought they must have a very odd sense of humor.